He worked there for a while, then he went over to the Ohio Injector as a water boy, and then he also got an apprenticeship in the copper shops at the old Wadsworth Salt Company. Right before he started in his business, his last job, he worked at the Ohio Match Company as a block feeder, and then in his spare time, he was taking a correspondence course in electrical engineering, and of course after he did that, that's when he went into business, which was 1914. And he started, the first shop was in a small electrical shop in the building where the Crooks and Motzko barber shop was located. And later he moved into the Curtis and the Durling cycle shop. Of course, Grandpa was into motorcycles and stuff, so I'm sure that fit right in with him. And as his business began to grow, he moved into the basement room at the corner of Broad Street and Main Street where the C.F. Mott's company started. There was a jewelry store on High Street. Grandpa had the one side of it, and of course the jeweler had the other side of the store. From that location, he moved to the Lawrence grocery store, which was where it was located. And in 1923, in fact, there's still a block above the building there, he moved over to the College Street store. And then, of course, during the Depression back in 1932, he just about lost the business. It got down to himself for about a year. A year later, things were getting a little bit better, so he started hiring some more help. And of course, that's when he went into the electrical business full time. And then as soon as they started producing appliances and stuff, he started to get into the appliance business also. So Drew, if you want to start this. And that's my grandfather and my grandmother, and that was their wedding picture. And that's their honeymoon. And they went to Niagara Falls, and of course back then, according to them, it was all dirt roads and pretty bumpy and stuff, and it was about a 3-day trip. And I know they had a problem, they had a flat tire, and but very, very tough traveling, I guess, with the road conditions back then. And that's actually my grandparents. That was in the Renaissance magazine, and somebody had brought it into the store there, but that was them on a Sunday drive. And they were with with Aunt Nora and Uncle Harry, and they were just out for a Sunday drive. And that's Grandpa's first vehicle right there. Of course, had the wooden spokes and everything. And there's one of his motorcycles. He definitely had a lot of motorcycles. There's another one. And that's part of the motorcycle gang that he belonged to, which Wadsworth had a motorcycle gang. And he was one of those members in there somewhere. But most of these were all Indian and Harley Davidson motorcycles. Okay, now that article I found in a paper that was done it was in the newspaper back in the 60s. But Henry Boffman and Wes Bicksler, motorcycles rider, were caught by Marshal Lucas on Monday while speeding on Broad Street. So the Mayor Boyer sentenced them to do traffic duty under the Marshal's direction for 10 days. So that was their penalty back then. And that's my grandfather, and let's see, that would be Mr. Moore, and I'm not sure. Ed, do you know who that third one is there? On the right, I'm not sure exactly who that is. And I don't know if that was in the annex or in the Methodist church, but I believe it was in one of those buildings there. Now that was down at the old building that was, well, it'd be in the CIS parking lot. It was in that building. And actually that washer, I still have it in my warehouse, but they drove that during some of the parades. It had a gasoline engine on it, and it, in fact, I don't see it there. It has, well, they must have refined it a little bit. It has a steering wheel on it now. And the only problem was, I guess, when they went down College Street, they did start to lose control of it because they never put brakes on it. But other than that, it was a pretty neat thing. And that's one of the parades back in 1939. That's the 125th anniversary. And I do have one of those souvenir programs that's basically like new. It's in excellent shape, which I did bring that with me tonight. That was an ad that was in one of the church bulletins. If you notice the phone number there, it was 53. But I had a gentleman about, it was probably 5 or 6 years ago. They were redoing the facing on a building down on Main Street here, and they were from Columbus. And he brought a sign up. I have it in my store right now, but he was just shocked because it was a 4-digit phone number. So, of course, I had an ad sitting next to it with an old monitor top refrigerator. It was a 3-digit phone number, and then I showed him this one that was a 2-digit. We've changed a little bit. Now, okay, that was the College Street store there, the one that still has the stone above it. And that is when they started, you can see some of the old early wringer washers and the sweepers and lamps and lighting fixtures. I don't know how good you can see that or not. That is an old invoice from 1931. And it was one of my grandpa's invoices he sent out, but I had a copy of it. But back then, well, 10 hours labor was $12.50 for the labor back then for 10 hours. And that's Grandma and Grandpa on their 50th wedding anniversary. And that's actually, that was up off of West Street. Behind his house there at one time he had a tree farm. He sold Christmas trees. And they had an orchard and stuff up in there. At that time he actually owned all that property up through West Street Park, which eventually was sold to the city. And that's one of the, I think that's the window over there on College Street. That I don't know. I don't know if anybody can help me with it or not. We had that picture, and I'm not really sure where that house is from. I didn't know if anybody, I was hoping Caesar was here. He might know it, but I'm not really sure who that belonged to. Well, that's where they grew up, was on College Street. So, so I'm kind of thinking that was his house. That was down there by the old Swift Auto Parts. That is actually up in the Lutheran Church. The lights up there in the up on the top of the church. And there's Wes, Uncle Wes and Bruce, and again that's over at the Lutheran Church up there in the attic, and they're putting the lights in. And that's the 4 boys during the war. All of them were in the service. My dad actually got in right at the end of the war, so he didn't really have to go off to wartime, but the other ones did. And that is one of the old Blue Tip festivals where they used to have the big merchant tents. And of course at that time most of the merchants in town all put a display in. As you'll see, we kind of got everything setting up on risers and stuff there, but eventually that was kind of the end of it. After we had it up at the high school, and we had a couple of bad storms, and we had a lot of damage. A couple of bad storms came through. Okay, that's just an old bill from 1935. It was $1 an hour for labor. That is the College Street store right there. And that's when they first had the old monitor top refrigerators. And those are some old wringer washers. Not the one, I forgot one at the store there. It's not that one. That again is out at the Blue Tip Festival. Of course, if you look at some of the prices, there's an old black and white TV for $128, which, you know, back in that era was still pretty good money, especially when you see what we're selling them for today. You know, flat panels are being sold for that. And there's the old Maytag washer and dryer. Of course, obviously you can't buy them for that anymore, but Harvest Gold too. And those are the Westinghouse slant front washers, which they were real popular in their day. They got away from them for many years, and of course then they went back to the front loaders again to conserve water and stuff. And those are just some old pictures out at the Blue Tip Festival. There's an old wringer washer there. There's an incinerator. That's let's see, that's Russ Jones right there. Probably my dad there, and that's Uncle Wes. And there's 1955, one of his trucks. Well, go back to that one, Drew. Can you go back? Yeah, you can kind of see the phone number right there. That was in 55, and it was 3-2153. Back in 55 was the phone number. And again, that's the parade. Okay, some more Blue Tip Festival displays. Now hold that there once, Drew. I don't know if you noticed the price of that freezer, but that was back in the early 50s, and that freezer was like $375. And to give you an idea of that, I mean, today we sell a freezer for less than $500. It's actually that size or bigger, so that had to be kind of a luxury back in that era to own a freezer, a big freezer like that. Dishwasher, $158. Portable dishwashers, of course, we hardly sell them anymore, but here's a picture of the square. Okay, that's Memorial, well, the ball field out there, and I guess Grandpa did the lighting out there. And that is over at Young's Restaurant, and that was a bunch of merchants from the area, from Wadsworth and different areas around here. And yeah, it's a merchants' picnic that they used to have over there, Young's Restaurant, every year. Okay, now is that Bruce? Yeah, it looks like Bruce. I'm not sure who that is on the left, but I believe, I don't know if that's at the I don't know if that's at the old Citizens Bank building. I think it might be. Okay, now that lady there, and I don't really know who she is, but actually it was Westinghouse that year. The first woman that had a set of twins that year was going to win a new washer and dryer, and so she was the recipient of that. And he's just those are actually salt and pepper shakers there, and then she got the washer and dryer. And anybody in the room, can you help me with who that church is? Or I'm not real sure where that's at. Yeah, I'm not really sure where that picture was from. And it wasn't marked on the back, but we shot it anyway. And of course, that's our old location, but they used to have night sales down there where people would roll everything out on the streets, you know, and they'd have like a sale. That was before the addition was put on or anything. Now that's Wes, and then that's Bert, Uncle Bert. Which Bert was in the business for a while, and then he actually, back in about 65 when he got married, they moved to California, and Bert had kind of retired from all the aircraft companies out there. He worked for Boeing and all the different aircraft companies. And there's my dad with a bunch of console TVs. Now, that is Eddie McGill on the right. That's Eddie McGill. Yes, it is, and I'm not exactly sure who's on the left. But that's Ed McGill on the right. That was the one that was on Citizens Bank. I don't know whatever happened to that clock. Wish it was still there. It's kind of a neat landmark. I know, it's kind of a neat landmark. Mm-hmm. Okay. Most of them, let's see, there's Russ Jones. Not sure who the second one is. Lanny Jones, Dave Brown, Lloyd Maxon, Bob Moss. Who's the next one? Pat. And Eddie McGill and Perkins.
Jim Perkins.
Yes, Jim Perkins. Mm-hmm. Okay, Pat, how old were you then?
Huh?
How old were you in that picture?
Pretty darn young.
That didn't answer the question. Yeah. Okay, and there's
Bob started as an apprentice with your
yeah. Bob was there probably 30-some years before he went to work for the county. Yeah. And there's some old Speed Queen, which we are selling the line again, which we took it on about 3 years ago, but years ago we sold it too. And that is my dad on the left and Bob Doherty on the right. Okay, and that's my grandfather there, Chuck Chapman. Not really, he was getting some award, I'm not really sure what, but. And that is that would have been in 1964, during the 150th year. Because all the brothers have their beards. They're starting to grow their beards. And that's some of the old trucks. And again, that store is also, the annex was right on the right side of it there, so it'd be in like the parking lot where the CIS building is. And that is actually myself sitting by the washing machine there. The two older girls were the neighbor girls, and then the other two girls are my sisters, and my brother's in there somewhere, maybe on the other side of the float, but that was also in 64. And that was over at the barber shop, at Woods' Barber Shop, and of course Dale Wood, and then Joe Cordes that worked there for years, and Uncle Wes. And that's the four brothers again. And of course the old console stereos, those were popular in their day. We even sold the little old clock radios and stuff that you don't really even see anymore. And again, that's the old location before they put the addition on it. That is actually when we moved to the location that we're at now, which was in 84. And that was our 79th anniversary right there. So that is Let's see, Uncle Bruce, Wes, and myself. And that's the back of the school building there with the electrical trucks and everything. And that was actually in the old location down by the school during one of the sales. And there's the four brothers. And that's getting a load of Maytags. Now that was, I think that's Russ Jones up there. I don't know the other two, but it sure looks like Russ. And there's, well, it'd be Wes, my dad, and Lanny Jones. And that's the first guy. I'm not sure on the left who that is. And then you got Lanny, you got my Uncle Bert, and I'm not sure who the other gentleman is. And of course, those are some of the beautiful appliances back then. The copper tone was real popular. That's up in the TV room. And that's Uncle Wes and his dad kneeling there. That was back during the war, I think, when he was home during leave. And that's kind of that same picture again. And there's the float back in '64. Okay, and that's one of the sidewalk sales that they had down there. And that's when they started the addition onto the older building there. And that is back, I think, when they were selling war bonds in town here. And I don't know if any of you recognize this or not. I never got to see it, but I would have liked to have seen it when you see how small people are next to it, I guess. But that was built, I guess, for the expedition of the North Pole. Yeah. And I'm not really sure what building that was in, but a lot of fuse boxes back in. That's during one of the sales. And that's myself and Gus Thompson. Of course, Gus just retired about a year and a half ago. And another, that's probably the biggest sweeper you've ever seen, too. And $118 for a washer. And can't hardly get one delivered for that anymore. That was our 74th anniversary. And that is myself and Joe Benish. Of course, Joe's still with us. Now, that would have been up at the new place. Yeah, that's at the current location. And that's my dad, myself, and Gus. Another Blue Tip Festival. And that's my dad, myself, and my brother-in-law, Mark. And that's actually my mother. Now, she at that time was actually every Saturday they would do microwave cooking demonstrations, and she always did those. She really learned how to cook well in those things. She could make about anything in a microwave. Those are just some of the old Zenith radios. Actually, the funny thing, if you look at the old TV prices, they're really more than what they are today. A lot more. So, I mean, considerably, but much more. Again, that's the old location down there. It's more of the Zenith radios. That's the old store, too. Yes. Okay, that's Bob Doherty, Uncle Bert, and Uncle Wes. And of course, back in that era, we also sold small appliances too. And that's Jesse White. the old Maytag guy. And that's me when I had hair. And a lot of it. They had him over at Cascade Plaza, and they invited about probably a dozen different dealers from the area. And of course, he always had those big cigars. But the thing that I'd never forget about him, for the first 20 minutes, all that man did was tell dirty jokes. And everybody, their jaws were just dropping, and this coming out of him, because we're all used to seeing him on TV, and oh my gosh, he was something else. It's one of the old delivery trucks. And that's Joe and myself. And I believe that is down by the ball field down there, Memorial Park. Just another sale picture. And let's see, that was probably in the old store yet, down by the junior high. That's Gus and myself. And that's my dad, myself, and Mark. And that's actually my dad when he was out in Newton, Iowa, at the Maytag company. Okay. And that's Mark and myself carrying a refrigerator through the snow. And that would be me and my wife and little Drew. That was Drew when we just got him. And Drew made this little video on the business. But
Doing a PowerPoint presentation on Bicksler Electric.
Nice work, Drew.
Yep.
In history, Bicksler Electric started in 1914. First owned by my great-grandfather Wes Bicksler Sr., then owned by sons Wes Jr., Bruce, and Alden Bicksler. Currently owned by my father, Paul Bicksler. He was a sophomore in high school when he started working for my grandpa. Why choose Bicksler Electric than Lowe's or Home Depot? We have fantastic prices. We also have excellent selection. We have friendly, helpful, and knowledgeable salespeople. We also have professional installation and service. What do we sell? We have refrigerators, cooktops, ovens, ranges, washers, dryers, dishwashers, microwave ovens, freezers, and more, like DVD players, TVs, vacuum cleaner parts, like bags and belts.
If you get a chance sometime, stop over. I do have an old wooden wringer washer sitting on the floor that's 106 years old. It was produced by the Lovell Washer Company, which when I looked into it here at the library, they were the first company that ever built a wringer washer, and then they went out of business shortly after that, and they just started producing the wringer heads, and they made them for Maytag and the Easy Company. But it looks like an old wooden wine barrel with metal straps around it, and you got a crank handle, and you move it back and forth, and the paddles turn on the inside. And very low maintenance. Nothing to worry about. No computer boards. And we actually have an application through our buying group, but when somebody comes in, I can actually, if I have a model number, I can tell you exactly what everybody in the area is selling it for. I can tell you if they've got it in stock or if it's out of stock. Best thing we ever had through our buying group. It's awesome. But we actually, about 30 years ago, at that time it was called, well, we formed it, there was about 200 dealers from the Midwest, and it was called Key Midwest Buying Group. And then probably, 10, 12 years ago, we disbanded and we joined with another group, which we formed this nationwide marketing group. It is the biggest buying group in North America now. I didn't hear the figures for this past year. The previous year before that, we did over $15 billion in sales. So we have officers that go to different companies like Maytag or Frigidaire or whoever, and hey, we're estimating we're going to do, $500 million worth of business with you this year, but we need you to help us out. And so, they'll make us special models and stuff. Oh, dear. Any questions I can answer?
Just about every.
Certainly.
Just about every city.
Crosley used to make cars, and they used to make refrigerators. And Whirlpool bought the name rights to build washers and dryers with a Crosley name on it. And Frigidaire bought the name rights to build refrigerators, freezers, and ranges. So if I saw a Crosley range or a Crosley refrigerator, it's a Frigidaire. But it's an old company. They made a lot of record players. They were one of the first refrigerators out. They had the shelvador shelves that like slid around in them and stuff. Old company. So what I guess the name has been around so long that these bigger companies wanted to buy the name. It's another line of distribution for them. Any other questions out there?
Paul,
Yes, sir.
I knew your dad, forever, but I guess till tonight didn't know about your uncles. So how did it all revolve where Eldon?
Well, Wes Sr. was the oldest boy, and then Bruce, and then my dad, then Bert, and then my dad. Now, Bert, all of them worked in the business until like 1965, and that's when Bert moved out to California. So Wes kind of worked in the office, Bruce kind of did the wiring, and my dad ran the store back then.
Okay, but I guess I just never knew your uncles. So what?
Oh, really?
Did they?
I'm trying to think when they retired.
Your dad, I guess.
Let's see, they were still there when they must have retired in the mid-70s, mid to late 70s.
I
Yeah.
guess because I used to just go in the store and dealt with your dad. I guess.
Well, Wes was in the office a lot, and Bruce was out on the road a lot. But
In
Yes, sir.
1963, I bought a house at 184 North Part East Street,
okay,
and soon after, we stripped all the walls of the wallpaper, and W.S. Bicksler in 1906 had signed that wall.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The house was probably pretty new at that time, so
Yeah.
he didn't build that house, did he?
Keep having papered walls didn't pay the bill.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I looked at that somewhere in my
Yeah,
archives.
really? Yeah, that'd be neat. Yeah, I never really worked too much with him, my grandfather, other than at his house. I worked 5 days a week for him in the summer, to maintain that property up there, and he was everything had to be perfect. I mean, you know what it was like, Pat. Could be a weed in that yard, but I know guys that said that they worked for him said that they never really used to see him sit down to eat lunch. He'd be eating a sandwich and twisting wire nuts with the other hand. They said he was just kind of hyperactive and he just never sat down,
When I went to Goodyear Aerospace, they hired me because they said I was from Wadsworth and we have really good high work ethics in Wadsworth.
Well, that was good to know.
Statement that came from the guy who
Really?
hired me.
Well, somewhere, and I couldn't find them. I've got pictures of my grandfather actually with block and tackle hoisting transformers onto the poles. I mean, they did that work back then, which you couldn't even begin to think about doing it today. But he had a big crew to do that, you know.
How many trucks you got on the road wiring homes?
Well, I'm not. I went out of I got out of the wiring business right after the housing crash, so to be.
Paul,
I kept.
I can interrupt you. The Doherty work for you?
Bob.
That's her dad.
Aye. He was a great guy. I mean, I knew him when you guys were out on 261.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great guy. That how many years has he been gone now? Was it? Yeah. Yep. Nice man.
Bobby Lee Doherty, I knew him when I was just a pup. But I think by the time he got out of high school, he's working for the Wadsworth Farmers Exchange, and he was delivering feed to us on the farm.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he had so many muscles when you hired him.
Mm-hmm. And then he had, was it MS he had, or he had MS, right? That's what it was. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. But truly a nice guy. Yep.
Who was your official family photographer? You had so many pictures.
These were all pictures that my uncles and my dad had, and everything like that. So I've got a whole catalog of them here. Yeah, but pretty neat pictures. Yeah, it's kind of neat to see how the appliances have evolved. You know, you look at the old washer and you look at these new ones that are all computerized. You know.
Well, if there's nothing more, we can